All right, guys, we're back. It is a Monday, early afternoon. Not quite morning. I was too tired to do anything in the morning, but yeah, it is what it is. But we're equipped. We're equipped, doing what we said we'd do, and we'll take a little look back on yesterday's game against Arsenal. Now, if you were one to watch my preview, I was very adamant about, you know, predicting absolutely nothing positive for Man United in the last 3 to 4 games. That there's absolutely nothing really that United can offer. There's no real semblance of passion, fight, or desire, or urgency to really get anything across the line for Manchester United. That they've lost their cause, essentially lost their cause. So we're going to have a look in yesterday's game. Today's game is Aston Villa v Liverpool. But it's going to be it's interesting actually, to say the very least, with this game. It's interesting because it's not really what everyone thought it would be. In terms of how the game panned out, I think in certain regards, various aspects about the United team, it was very much a sort of, throwing whatever you have in hope that there is enough of a togetherness that elevates one another on the pitch to a level to where you can actually see some good performances, and you never know, produce an upset result. It's possible. It can happen. The underdog stories you get, those sort of things, they can happen. Now, in terms of team, in terms of the team that played yesterday against Arsenal, Arsenal put out more or less their strongest 11 versus, a Manchester United who literally cannot catch a break with injuries. And by the way, shout outs to Wayne Rooney in calling this out, in saying that he doesn't believe that probably about half of those players are, were probably not injured enough, to not be featured in a match day squad. Maybe you could argue about in terms of fitness to starting a game, but most certainly making the bench and being able to service in the last 10-20 minutes of a game. I genuinely think that there is cause. There's cause for reason to believe that, and and having Rooney call it out amongst other people prior to this, it serves reason. It does serve reason, and why wouldn't you? If you're in their shoes, imagine it. You're in their shoes. You've got all of this nonsense going on at the club. Everything's like just woeful. Your standards are on the floor. Your shame. Well, you've been embarrassed so many times, you don't have any shame left. So you sort of think, well, what's the point, right? What's the point? I'll pick up a knock. Wink, wink. I'll pick up a knock, and then I'll spend it on the sidelines for a huge amount of time until, oh, what's that? We've got an FA Cup final coming up. Oh, I'll make sure I'm fit and available for that. I'll just come back into training at the most ironic time so that I'm ready to play in that game. Forget the other dead rubber Premier League games, because the Premier League is nothing to play for. Technically speaking, you could still, win a couple games and pick up 6 points and hope the other teams drop theirs, so you get some positions back. But they don't care. They don't care. So why should we? In terms of the team, if I were to predict a 5-0, I would have said, well, a team of that sort of quality, you could understand going up against a team of that quality from Arsenal. You think, yeah, that team there should be beating that team 3, 4, 5-0. It should be beating it comprehensively. We didn't see that. We didn't see that at all from Arsenal. It was a very, very lackluster performance from Arsenal. And do you know what? I think in hindsight, you could almost say, well, big opportunities missed for Manchester United. You could have won that game. Seriously, Man United could have won that game. In hindsight, hindsight's a wonderful thing. Predicting is absolute cancer, but hindsight's a beautiful thing. To realise that what happened in the moments change, fine tune certain aspects of that game, and you find a very different outcome. And it could have been just that. I think in for the most part, the defence and midfield, I think, did okay. I think they did fairly okay. I mean, a couple of individuals, standout individuals. I mean, Johnny Evans did what he could. I think Diogo Dalot did what he could. Casemiro was essentially at. I mean, people say Casemiro's at fault. I've looked at the goal and I'm just thinking, well, he sort of positioned himself to cover a cutback type pass, but he's not monitored Trossard's movement at all. Wan-Bissaka, on the other hand, is tracking him, but lets him come inside into that space between himself and Casemiro. That's where the goal threat comes from. Maybe if Wan-Bissaka tracks it by like trying to keep Trossard to going on the outside and sticking with his man that way, maybe the pass is harder to get to Trossard, and maybe the goal doesn't happen. Outside of that, a couple of shots that forced Onana to save. Aside from that, I think it was quite a slow day at the office for Arsenal. Quite a slow day at the office. I think it's probably a case of defence and midfield just clearing up whatever it is that the other team had to offer. And I think guys like Sofyan Amrabat, somebody who couldn't buy a game, was into various extents. Maybe people would say, well, he's not good enough anyway, so what does it matter? He's going back to Fiorentina in the summer. But on the premise that you give credit where credit is due, standout performer in midfield alongside Kobbie Mainoo. Standout performance from those two. And, usually it would have been Casemiro Kobbie Mainoo or a Casemiro Sofyan Amrabat. But those two together worked well. They did. They worked well. A couple of loose passes from Sofyan Amrabat, but fundamentally, the role he played in the team suited the team. Control the ball better, and you controlled the ball really well. Considering Arsenal, a team that likes to play with domination, were not the dominant side today. They were not the dominant side. Fairly split even with chance distribution. Possession favoured the home side. I think the setup that was deployed today helped in the sense that when we had the ball, it wasn't too wasteful, obviously, until you get to the final third. More patient. And I mean, with this team, if you can invoke patience and steady build up, you can work some really, really good chances. And I think even with some of the lower quality players that we could probably look at and say, well, for goodness sakes, you shouldn't even be here. At the same time, you sort of look at it and think, but if you just play like this, you'll be more rewarded. You will be more rewarded. And that's going up against, a centre-back partnership that people will say is the best centre-back partnership performance-wise this season. And, I'm inclined to agree with that. I do think Gabriel Saliba has been the most consistent, most best performing partnership out of all the Premier League clubs this season. So, I mean, in terms of the quality in the final third, I think is where we have to look at and say, yeah, that's not good enough. Højlund, a few chances, couldn't keep anything really on target all that much. So Garnacho probably the player that tried the most, but lacked execution the most. A bit of a, probably as far as a quality standpoint, a poor game. But I think sometimes you can get that from a player as long as they're trying the right things. You sort of sit back and you say, well, on a different day, maybe more of what they tried would pay off. It's just about the execution at that moment in time. And I think Garnacho, he can get the good execution, but inconsistencies, once again, is a big decisive factor. Amad Diallo was relatively good up until the point that he ends up getting injured as well. Hopefully it's not a bad injury, because I'd like to see him being included in the squads between now and the end of the season. With 3 games left, Newcastle at home, Brighton at home. Oh, no. Newcastle at home, Brighton away, and then Man City at Wembley. I would like to see Diallo sort of not be phased out of the picture. He might end up getting phased out of the club entirely once we hit the summer, but that would just be club decision by that point. But I think for what he has to offer versus the competition for his position, I think is worth looking into. Is worth going with, to be honest. I think he offers more on a creative basis out on the right than anybody else does. I mean, Anthony's greedy, he shoots. I think he's a bit of like a chaotic energy. He doesn't really have any idea as to what's going on half the time. So, I mean, it's not great. It really isn't great. I think the idea of how, in certain aspects, where we had a chance to do something good, we opted for a bad choice, for instance, in shooting from distance. Where you could work an easier opportunity, a more dangerous opportunity, and we opted to take the chance and think, well, we could score if we shot from distance. And I don't know. I don't know, but the bottom line is that Manchester United's final third, once again, the bane of our season. Minus, of course, the second bane of our season, which was our defence and midfield exposure. Outside of that, yeah, it comes back to haunt us. Not enough quality. Where does the quality come from? Even if we had some of the better players available, is the creativity there? I mean, we started with McTominay in a position that people have been desperate for him to play in, and we've seen him ghost yet again. It's another game. It's another ghostly performance. I mean, if you wanted to get more out of McTominay in that position, it might have been an idea to switch a game plan to say, we'll prioritise crossing. If you're a winger, I don't want you shooting. I want you crossing. Focus on your crosses. Because you've got Højlund, who can mark near a far post, and you've got McTominay, who can mark either or. Right? Vice versa. Swings and roundabouts. Rotate, move. Work the half-yard spaces. They've not. I mean, Højlund's got a bit of pace to him, quite a bit of pace. McTominay's a bit slow, but he's got stature and height, and he uses his physical strength. So he would make a fairly good matchup to the centre backs. Why not get stuck in? You can have Kobbie Mainoo drift forward a little bit, so you can recycle possession more easily when you've played the corners or the crosses. Why not? As far as the actual team selection goes, I mean, Jesus Christ, I've not seen a team as sporadic in quality. And I mean, I sort of delved back to this, where it was a bit, shoestring, a bit sort of glued together at the very least. And I mean, we won this game, but I get vibes from similar vibes in respects to the team selection here, right? And that's back in the 2016 season where Man United beat Arsenal 3-2, right? Now, looking at the team that played yesterday, right, our team consisted of Onana in goal, Dalot left back, Evans, Casemiro centre backs, Wan-Bissaka at right back, Amrabat Mainu in midfield, Diallo, McTominay, Garnacho as your attacking midfield three, with Højlunds then up top. And your bench had Anthony, Kambwala, Ericsson, Forson, Wheatley, Amas, Bendia, Collier, and Ogonai. I think that's how you pronounce it. Ogonai. It's a weird spelling, but another academy player. And then I sort of compared it to this team: De Gea, Varela, Carrick, Blind, Rojo, Schneiderlin, Lingard, Ander Herrera, Juan Mata, Memphis Depay, and an academy breakout Marcus Rashford. The substitute bench on that day was Januzaj, Romero, Paddy McNair, Andres Pereira, Where I think that's how you pronounce the name, Riley, and Timothy Fosu Mensah. Madness. Now, bearing in mind that Arsenal team that we played that day wasn't as good in quality, like overall. I mean, it still had some star players in there. I mean, you had Alexis Sanchez, Mesut Ozil, had Aaron Ramsey in there. Still had Laurent Koscielny, had Petr Cech in goal for them. Olivier Giroud was on the bench as well. David Ospina as their substitute goalkeeper. So you get my drift. Arsenal team not as good as it was, by any stretch of the imagination as the team was yesterday in terms of quality, like player by player, position by position. But in terms of how United have had to string their team together, there's similarities there. There's similarities in terms of how most of our bench, plenty of players, played out of position, literally due to injuries. Just we're desperate. We're literally having to just throw whatever we can conjure up into a concoction that hopefully produces good results. So that's my feelings on the team selection. It's it is what it is, but I'm sort of not as. I mean, people say you should still be mad because your team lost. Of course, I don't want to be losing any games. But a team that was meant to get completely ran through, that team showed more desire to not be taken as a joke, more so than most of the first team has that's currently sat on the injury bench, probably just like fully fit and ready to play, but we're injured, feel bad for us. Is what it is, really. Quick note as well to sort of finalize the wrapping up of this. The scenes at Old Trafford after the game, with the heavy rainfall, the downpours, it was a torrential storm. It was, right? It was. Torrential storm. Regardless, I have never seen a football ground facility be so I'd say void of structural integrity So much so that in almost every corner of the stadium, where the edge of the roof is over the stands, were waterfalls, literal waterfalls. The stands, videos showing water just flowing, almost like a stream state, just a stream of water flowing down the steps in various stands, various points in the stadium. There's water flowing through the stands. Certain sections of the ground where people would be sat, where people were sat, just completely drenched, just literally huge bodies of water just falling in just that section of seating. Imagine if the game was still going on at that point. Those fans would have had to have vacated it. They wouldn't be sitting there. The whole sections of those stands would have been vacated, forced to stand somewhere else, forced to stand, or probably you're just asked to leave. Maybe they just get asked to leave. It's like, well, sorry, but yeah, we can't have you standing here either because, obstruction policy and all. So we're just going to have to ask you to leave. Either ask you to leave or go stand out somewhere else. Can't have you standing on the stairs. So it's just, the whole thing is disgusting. The whole thing. This stadium behind me that's meant to be a symbol of, footballing greatness, footballing excellency, the theatre of dreams, they call it. We're dreaming if this stadium's fit for purpose. There's no way this stadium is fit for use. The away dressing room, and I showed this video on the Sunday Night Takeaway show last night, more towards the end of the show. So do be sure to go check it out on Early Doors Football TV, but also featured on my channel here. I showed a video of the Arsenal dressing room, the away dressing room. These guys after the game were literally there recording videos. Panelled roofing, right? Roof tiles and everything. There's water, and it's not just a single drip. It was pouring through. Tons of water droplets just all dripping all over this place. That's the away dressing room, which, if I'm not mistaken, is somewhere under the Stretford end. Somewhere under the Stretford end. That's under a two-tiered stand. A two-tiered stand, and the water, you're telling me, is going from the roof of the Stretford end, dripping through all the support foundations, dripping down to the stands, going through the stands, and dripping into the hallways below that. That is unprecedented amount of bullshittery. That stadium is not fit for purpose. And I'm not trying to be funny here, but if those are the scenes where water can just drip through so much and drench so many things, can you imagine how much damage in terms of longevity of exposure, how much damage can be caused to that? The wear life on that stadium without having serious work be done to it. Someone could get hurt. If something comes loose, if a foundation that hasn't been checked or hasn't been seen rots away enough so much that support integrity fails, and snap, it falls, hits someone, kills them. What do Manchester United Football Club say? The stadium is not fit for use. It's not safe. Seriously, every home game is potential to not being safe for fans to go to Old Trafford. Why the fuck should I be saying that? Why? It's not good enough. It's not acceptable. The most embarrassing thing about it is that this this is on the basis that, yeah, we probably would have to, if you might as well just revamp the entire stadium at the same time, because it's all under the same sort of wear life, and people will talk about, well, a new stadium, just keep sort of topping up on Old Trafford just to try and, with maintenance work, I suppose. But even then, that might still not be fully safe. Imagine what would have to happen if we have to borrow the Etihad and use the Etihad, use Manchester City Stadium for our home fixtures, right? The Etihad for home fixtures, because Old Trafford wasn't fit for purpose. Neglect, negligence, abandonment, all under the Glazer stewardship. Please understand how much of a problem those guys still are. They're still here. Please understand that Avram Glazer, right, and fair plays to them, the women's team, the FA Cup final, they won the final, lifted the FA Women's FA Cup trophy. Avram Glazer was there. He was down in Wembley. Meanwhile, Old Trafford was falling apart. Sir Jim Ratcliffe, Sir David Brailsford, fucking Keir Starmer as well, Labour leader, sat there in the stands. They got to see the negligence. They got to see it for their own eyes. It wasn't just pictures or videos and where they think, oh, well, somebody could have just taken that to make it look bad. No, you watched it. You watched it. You saw factually just how out of touch that stadium is, how unbelievably unsafe it is. There it is. There's your evidence. That doesn't need small time investment. Seriously, it might need just a full reset. Build a new stadium, one that will be fit, safe, appropriate for usage. Forget modern, just a place that's safe for fans to go. Anyway, guys, let me know your thoughts and feelings about the game, the teams, the situation, the season for Manchester United, but also your thoughts and verdicts on Old Trafford. I mean, the state of our stadium at the moment is disgusting, and the fact is we are playing there again midweek against Newcastle. Is that stadium going to be cleaned up for that game? You might still see some remnants of the torrential downpour from yesterday. You might see it. It might still be there. So we'll have to see what happens. Let me know what you guys think about all of those topics that we've discussed in today's video. Pop it down in the comment section below. Aside from that, be sure to like the video and subscribe if you haven't done so already. All support is massively appreciated. Thank you very much for watching the video as well, and we will see you again very soon. All the best, take care, and enjoy your Mondays. Ciao for now.